Welcome to the Parenting with Confidence podcast. I am your host, Teresa Alexander Inman, board certified behavior analyst and infant toddler developmental specialist. Today, I am extremely honored to have as my guest Carew Papritz. He is also known as the Cowboy Philosopher. He's an author of multi-award-winning book, The Legacy Letters, though fictional, The Legacy Letters has won acclaim as life lessons book for all generations, gaining the distinction of being the only book in publishing history to win awards in both fiction and nonfiction categories. A Renaissance man in an age that lauds the specialist, the Huffington Post says that Papritz intrigues and enlightens, charms and catalyzes change for every reader. So this is so exciting. I can't wait to be intrigued and enlightened. Thank you. And
wow. That's a lot of that's a bar to cross. We'll do our best. And I have to sparkle also. So really cool.
I appreciate you being here. Thank you for taking the time to be here and joining us to enlighten us on, because I know we can speak to so many topics, but my thing right now, as you are, you're an advocate, right? You're a children's literacy advocate. And for me, that's a huge thing. And I'd love to dive into children's literacy and what could, basically, I'm just going to throw all the questions out there and then you can just take it away.
Sounds good, Teresa. It's a pleasure to be on your show too. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh my gosh, thank you for being here. Now, I want to start with what can parents do to help? Because, children start at home with parents before they get to school. So what can parents do to help children be more literate, whether it be reading and writing?
I think so much of it is how we walk our talk, right? I mean, essentially as parents, we're there to be the leaders, and if they see us with a book, guess what? They're going to want to be with a book. I mean, it's as simple as that. Mm-hmm. I think part of that goes to our whole digital age. I don't want to be one of these guys that's always bashing the digital, because look at us, we're on Zoom, we're making this happen. But on the other hand, if reading is that important, and it is, of course, that we really need to focus on being the best examples to our kids. So at a certain point, you got to put the phones down. You've got to create this quiet time, or, like I say, at dinner time, it's a digital free zone. And I've advocated for those type of things for years, just places that you shut off the electronics. And then not only shutting them off, then what do? What do you fill them in with? Well, let's go outside. I'm a big advocate of being outside as much as possible. But then if it's reading, then you have a quiet time to read, or else you have books around you rather than going to a phone, or rather than going to the tablet and opening it up and this is how we're going to read. Because I think the physical act of holding a book and or a magazine and or a paper is it's because it's so human sized. It's something that you can relate with on a very tactile level. And I think to show kids that this is an enjoyable process, as opposed to the immediacy, or the thing that the video games give you and the text messages give you and all this. Reading is a different experience. It's a much more immersive experience. So I think it's very, very important that we walk our talk and show our kids that reading is important by having these things around.
Absolutely, because it's like, sweetheart, pick up a book while mommy's on a phone.
Yeah, thank you, Teresa. Exactly. Really, walk the talk. So, oh my God. And of course, read to your kids at a certain age. Sit down with them. You make the time. I mean, this is why you have kids. If you're not gonna engage with them, well, then what the heck,
No, exactly. I remember my mom, she told me when I was pregnant to read while I was pregnant, read out loud to my children when I was pregnant. Yep. And it's amazing. Both of them were amazing readers at in first grade, my second son read at a fourth grade level. So it's
yeah. And I think part of it too is we as educators talk about the importance of reading. We say, oh, it's really important to read, but guess what? Why is it important to read? Where does it fit into some job market? How does it fit into imagination, and how does it fit into thinking? There's a whole school of thought in how we relate to the digital world, that we're skimming information constantly, and yet we're not doing deep thinking anymore. And so we don't know how to cogitate. We don't know how to imagine. We don't know how to problem solve, because it's all about, let's go to the net, we'll grab the problem, get done with it. Yeah, but how do you make those interesting leaps? I mean, I talk about, I lecture to business people. I say, look at Steve Jobs. And initially, he wanted to be a typographer. Know this?
Oh, I had no idea.
No, it was fine. It was fascinating. He was fascinated with typography, and thus Apple's fonts and whatnot were almost intrinsic to how he communicated. But with that, he understood how important design was. Creating whatever it was, form following function idea. And so it's fascinating that this guy came from this artistic background before he, entered the digital world. And there's a prime example of why it's important to have the arts involved, and is a part of the arts, and integrating that way of looking at the world differently, which is what reading brings to you.
Okay, so you've said a few things about that, how like the importance of reading beyond just reading. So it changes your view of the word. What other things can we get from reading, just beyond looking at the words and, just engaging in the content?
I think it teaches you tolerance. It teaches you the fact that there are all these different ways to look at the world and be in the world. I think that's an important part of it, the game. And I remember how important, okay, I'm going to date myself for those of you who don't know what a bookmobile is. They are still around, and how I would have the bookmobile person bring books to me about inspirational people. And I remember that as a kid. I was literally, she would put aside the books for me and I would read them. And I couldn't wait till the next round, the next couple of weeks to engage with her. And literally this person just opened up an entire new world to me of people who were doing impossible things in my mind as a kid that made them possible. So not only tolerance, but inspiration. I mean, how incredible are books that are able to do that?
Wow, that's amazing. So do you think that contributed to you being a filmmaker? All the reading that you've done, do you think that helped?
I think, oh yeah. I think reading every which way, it just allows you to inspire yourself, right? I mean, you put yourself in the film, right? You put yourself in the story. And I think that's the beauty. People say, oh, it's just got one ending and it goes like, no. I said, no, my gosh, that's the beauty of imagination. It's up here constantly. You know what I find? I love traveling. My dad was a geography teacher, and we've traveled around the world and all sorts of places. But I would love to read these adventure books as a kid about these various places. And then if we went to them, I was always amazed at my imagination and how it either fit or didn't fit, or how sort of catterwampus. It was wild. It was like, I remember the first time we went to Greece before COVID, and I was so excited. Because I've always wanted to see the Parthenon. You couldn't see it from the plane, and you got off and you're around the corner, you're looking, oh my God, there it is. And it was like, yeah, it fit. It really worked. It was really my dreams. And there it was, the things I'd read in books, and there it was in real life, and it came together. And how exciting.
Yes, that is amazing. I have goosebumps just thinking about it. And sparking the imagination is so important. People don't like, I want parents to understand the value in that, because with the video games and all the other things, a lot of the electronics, there isn't the opportunity to spark the imagination because it's all right there. And that is just really, because I used to read as I was an avid reader growing up, and I experienced that. I would go to those places. I remember I read a book, and this guy drove an Aston Martin. I had no idea what an Aston Martin looked like, but I was sitting in an Aston Martin, and just
Yeah.
being in that moment, and it was just amazing. I just really enjoyed the experience of reading, because you can go anywhere in a book.
Yeah. And look, how much does it cost you? A library card,
Exactly.
access to go to all these worlds and meet all these different people and to be exposed. I mean, talk about how traveling is so important to exposing you to all these parts of the world. Well, guess what? Reading does the same thing. I mean, it's just extraordinary what reading does. And sometimes it's nice to, in this conversation that we're having, it's nice to revisit this idea.
Yes.
How powerful reading is. And we're not talking just on the phone. We're talking about, again, the interaction with the book. I'm a big advocate of writing thank you letters. I think you know a little bit about this. But part of that is because writing a thank you letter is a physical act, and you put time paper, and time is what someone holds. They hold the time that you've given them into that piece of paper. Well, guess what? A book holds the same thing. And that's the extraordinary part. I mean, you can feel the author. You can feel, you literally physically, tactically feel how they're bringing you into their world and the time that they put into those words.
That is fascinating, because I never thought of it that way before.
Yeah. It's really an interesting thought. And when you tell people, especially, I love Valentine's Day, what should I do? I said, write a love letter. How do I do that? So I actually teach how to write a love letter, or a Valentine's Day letter. But I say, look at this gift that you can give somebody, and hold it, and they get to hold it over and over and over again. When they talk about fires, what are the first things you grab? You grab your pets, your kids. Wait a second. Your kids, your pets, in that order. Your pictures and your letters, right?
Yes,
that's what people say. Yes. That's what you grab. And now you don't have letters to hold anymore because people don't have them anymore. So
that is sad. Yes, because I actually still have letters that my grandmother wrote me, and she passed years ago, and I still have those letters from the 80s, because I enjoy being able to sit down and read them again. So very cool. Yeah, and they're a thing of the past now, which is,
but it doesn't have to be. It really doesn't. I mean, I think it's harder than ever to have someone sit down and actually write that letter. But again, the impact of that is much like a book. And if you start to, I look at it as a timeless way of communicating, because how powerful, I mean, who's going to hold on to love text messages or love? Some people might, but it's not the same as a piece of paper, is it? It's just so powerful to hold someone's time in your hands. And if you look at time as the most valuable gift we have on this planet, we have X amount of time, and you put this piece of paper, you get to hold it, or into the pages of a book. Same idea.
Wow. But you give me such a different view of reading and writing. And I hope, everybody else who's listening is getting that as well, because it's not just about reading, it's about feeling and experiencing the books and or the letters and the writing of it. What I can imagine, because I haven't written a letter in a little bit, but to be just so cathartic, just writing and getting it out there and sharing your time with somebody. That's beautiful.
Yeah, I think it is. I think, and to teach kids this now, a little bit askew of that, promoting writing these thank you letters for years, and actually started this thing called National Thank You Letter Day on November 14th. And it's been a really interesting journey, because we created the world's largest handwritten thank you letter, the size of a basketball court.
Oh, nice.
If you go to nationalthankyouletterday.com, you can check it out. And the whole idea is to get not only kids back into writing thank you letters, the importance of it, but also to get adults back doing the same thing. We actually got a Guinness record, Guinness World Record for the world's largest envelope, letter, and stamp. The stamp was 15 by 25 feet.
Wow.
You gotta check it out. It's really wild. But anyhow, it's all in promotion of this whole National Thank You Letter Day.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I, agree with you that because now you don't see children writing as much in schools. And those who do, and I shared with you before we started recording that I've been in classes with, 8th graders and 5th graders, and their penmanship is so, it's like, 4-year-old wrote it.
Yeah.
And I think that's doing them a disservice, not teaching children how to write, because then you're not working on those fine motor muscles.
Thank you for saying that. And and you probably recognize this too. It's really fascinating, the science behind this, because kids who are starting out on keyboards, literally, if let's say you're hitting an A with your finger, well, guess what? The A is not physically, what's it called? The fine motor skill and the electrical impulse that goes to your brain, it literally writes with neurons an A, right? You press an A on a keyboard, it's the same as an N, as a Z, as all these others. So it's not, you're not getting a physical connection, what an A looks like, and then that goes to reading also. So that's why writing is so important at a young age, or printing initially. You have to get a cursive. You could probably imagine with all the stuff I'm promoting, but just literally printing. And we're getting away from that because of course it's easier to go to the keyboard because it's easier. Everything's always easier, right?
Yeah, but they're missing those neuromuscular connections that we create when you write.
Yeah, it's huge. And we're getting away from it more and more and more and more and more. And I've had to really push for writing in cursive still. Fashion, I go, really? There's wonderful reasons for that, but at a minimum, learn how to print well.
Yes, absolutely. And what I've noticed too in the schools, since they've taken away a lot of the writing, a lot of children, because their fine motor muscles are not being developed, they can't open certain things.
Oh, interesting.
And I think that's a direct result of it because you're not using those muscles, and if you don't use it,
but your thumb muscle for your video game is incredible. I mean, if you could just with that,
Yes, but they're not engaging the index finger, which is the other part of the equation.
Oh, that evolutionary part where that thumb and finger is supposed to come.
Right.
That's funny.
Exactly. Wow. So before I forget, because I don't want to forget, how can people get in touch with you?
The easiest way is probably through my website, thelegacyletters.com, and all the social media. You can look at Carew Papritz. Hey, and also I wanted to say that there's a really neat thing that I was doing with kids. I started a thing called the I Love to Read series. I would take this book, the old Legacy Letters book, and I would get in the back of a horse, for example, and I would be reading along like this, and I look up at the camera, I'd say, oh, I love to read, and I love to ride, and I'd spur the horse, and off we go. So I all these little videos, I love to read, and I love to climb, or be in a raft, or in a go-kart, or whatever it may be, just tens and hundreds of these videos. And kids are always like, well, what's that all about? Well, guess what? I'm using this little trick called YouTube to get in through the back door and question like, well, why is this author doing? This is pretty cool. This is pretty neat. And actually there's a whole instructional primer on that with teachers that they're using in schools on how this author is doing these things and making reading fun. But it's a sneaky way of coming through the back door. So it's neat.
Nice. So we're making reading fun by having it available wherever we go, right? So
yeah, but in this way, it's sort of like through a YouTube video, which they all go, like, but what I'm trying to get them to question, why is this guy doing this? He's an author, but authors are supposed to be boring, and this guy isn't boring. And so maybe there's something in this book. Maybe there's something about this guy, and that conversation. If we can get the conversation open, we can we can get a book open.
Absolutely, yes. Are there
Yeah.
any other ways you can think of to get, children to open up a book? So you've talked about the parents doing it, and you've got your fun ways to do that. Can you think of anything else that could help that?
Um, I mean, those are two great ways there. I think just taking a kid to a bookstore. Oh my gosh, think about that. Or the library. Libraries are so supportive, and I really think how supportive a school is. It's got to be a combination of the parents
Yeah.
just together. I mean, they really have to say this is very, very important, especially in those first, up to sixth grade or so. After that, it becomes more problematic. But those initial years, it needs to be so much fun. It needs to be, we're taking time out to do this and then talk about it. That's the other thing too, right? Is the human interaction of not the digital interaction anymore, but how to converse face to face. I mean, I love your idea of saying, hey, no, it's important not just to have a podcast where you're listening, but you're watching people's reactions, because that's how we get these facial cues. And that, I think, is part of teaching kids how to be better human beings. And yeah.
Yeah, no, totally. I agree with you. And even, like when you talk about facial expression, then they're learning communication skills, body
Yes.
language, and all of those subtleties of communication that you don't get on a digital device, or
Yeah.
they're not even observing, because there's studies that show when children are just, when devices are the only things that are available, it actually affects the structure of their brains.
Yep.
Yeah, they need
100%.
that
100%.
interaction that with another human being to be able to develop those skills.
Yeah, and get this wild fact. Science has shown that 600 texts are equivalent to 1 minute of face-to-face communication.
Wow.
Think about how much you have to communicate through a text to get literally 1 minute of communication. That's why I'm always like, I don't want to text. I want to call. I want that immediacy. I want to get that
Yep.
intonation of what I'm trying to get across is much quicker with human communication. It's so funny. The other day, my son, he was, we're starting school again here in Arizona and early. And so he was working at a garage and helping out there sort of as a mechanic this summer. And I said, hey, you need to, you got to let your boss know you're going back to school and all that. So he texted him and he knows better. He knows. And I said, what are you doing? I said, I'm texting.
Yeah.
Pick up a phone call or go there in person.
Yes.
That is a good buddy of mine. I said, no, let him know. And he's like, oh, do I have to? I said, yeah, guess what? This is life. This is, if you hide behind the texting, you are not learning how to communicate face to face, which is what we all need to do.
Yes, I agree with you totally, because I'm the same way. People will call me, like a friend of mine, she always texts me and I always call her back. And I said, it looks like I'm ignoring your text, but you do remember that we have conversations over the phone.
Right. Yeah, exactly. We do have, right. The ability. So it's phenomenal. Yeah, it's, and that's interesting. Again, back to how books can teach us that communication. So I think it's very, very powerful. The reading, the writing, and the conversing about what you're reading. I think if kids understand, it's just like, it's not only this dive into there, but afterwards, well, what did you think about it? Well, what do you mean, what did I think about it? I mean, what did you think about the dragon that went and did this and this? Well, I don't know. Well, are you kidding me? Really, you don't know? Did you ride on the back of the dragon? What did the dragon look like? Where was the dragon at? Did it breathe fire? Did it breathe water? Did it breathe, and all of a sudden these little gears are like, oh, you can actually talk about books? Yes, you can. Very
Wow, amazing. Now, I want to be respectful of your time, sir. So I'm just going to ask you if there's one thing that you would want parents to leave this session with. What would it be?
What would it be? How about for parents to, instead of this huge, gigantic, I need my child to read, or why don't we just start simply and say, hey, I'm going to read to them one night a week. 15 minutes. Start simple, lower that bar. Or else, hey, this month, we're going to go to a bookstore. We're going to go to a library.
Mhm.
We're going to sit down and read together. And we're going to try this for, I don't know, a month. Let's try to do it twice a week. Again, is a big advocate of keeping the bar low, especially, it's almost like the New Year's resolutions to get fit again. You go into the gym and you're gonna 5 times a week, 7 days a week, 5 hours a day, right? And after 2 weeks, I'm done.
Yep.
Reading, if we're going to create this wonderful experience, let's do it bit by bit by bit. And we do it for 1 month. Hey, we'll do it for the next month. And all of a sudden, it starts to become part of the family routine, which I think is really the key to getting our kids reading more.
Yes, yes, and they need it. They need it. They need it. I see too often, like I said, in the school district where children are, they're in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, grades 3, 4, 5, and 6, and 7, and they can't read. And of course, what happens? They engage in problem behavior because somebody asked them to read and they don't know how to read. Now they're embarrassed and they want to
Oh,
deflect.
right. Yeah.
So it's just, reading is important. I mean, everywhere we go, we've got to read something. There's a sign, there's so many, reading is everywhere.
Yeah, and it really becomes it's such a societal function, isn't it? I mean, we just need to say this is a real big priority. We do as teachers. I did a book signing in Cuba when they opened up a few years. It was the first book signing of an American author post Castro, and this is part of my first ever book signing series. Also, it's another thing to get kids excited about. But this was, but I found out when I was over there that Cubans, they have the highest, I think the highest literacy rate in the world.
Wow.
The entire country. And I was welcomed like a rock star. I don't know if it was because I was American or because I was an author. I was hoping it was both, but it was incredible. I was actually one of the biggest book signings I've ever had, and I had to go to Cuba to make it happen. But they were so excited. They were so engaged. They Hemingway having his home in Cuba, but yeah, oh my gosh, it was that amount of literacy and the importance placed on reading in that country says quite a bit. And so I think that's part of what we need to do as parents, society, and with teachers. Teachers all on board with reading, but we need to do it arm in arm here.
Absolutely. Yes, I agree. And I think a lot of times too, especially in schools, children are not given a choice of what to read. They're just given something to read. And if they're not interested in it, it makes it a lot more challenging.
So well put, Teresa. So well put, right? What are you going to give them? You're going to give them an oatmeal and barley cookie when they want a chocolate chip cookie? Yeah. Right. Gosh, give it. And it's almost like putting out a smorgasbord. That's what the great part about books. Go explore and get the idea of exploring in a library. Teach them that. I mean, that's a cool idea, right? I mean, now we were up with that, but now we got to teach them because libraries are like, no, it's literally exploring. And go find that book. Go find that gold, that little treasure, that piece of gold there in the stacks, and pull it out and start reading. Wow, all these worlds compressed right here.
Yes, make a game of it.
Make a game of it. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Game of it. There we go.
Yes, awesome. Well, Carew, thank you so much for being here. It's been fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really enjoyed it.
It was a wonderful conversation, and I wish you all the best on getting all this great stuff out, especially with your podcasts, but also promoting parents reading. Anything I can do to help further that cause, please let me know.
Okay, remember you asked.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good.
Awesome. And again, people, you can get in touch with him at thelegacyletters.com. Okay, thank you, Carew.
All right, thanks, Teresa. Appreciate it.
Yes, my pleasure.